Welcome, I'm Corey Huffman, and this is my writing channel, where I do my best to tackle the technical aspects of writing narrative prose in the hopes of both improving my own craft and maybe helping a few aspiring writers like yourself along the way. In this video, I'll be analyzing George R.R. Martin's use of adjectives and how he implements the rule of three in his novel, A Clash of Kings, the second book in his famous series, A Song of Ice and Fire. Adjectives may not seem like a topic worthy of much consideration, but upon having read Martin's writing, I've gained a new appreciation for how these specific, easily digestible pieces of information maintain the integrity of a story's vision by providing little reminders of what the characters look like and where they are. Herein, Martin uses choice adjectives to sprinkle in specific and evocative sensory details without slowing down the narrative pace. And to show you how he does it, I've pulled 6 examples from A Clash of Kings and a 7th from Book 1, A Game of Thrones. The first thing you'll notice about these first 6 examples is that there's nothing extraordinary about them. These are not the quoted lines, the elegant similes and metaphors, or the vivid descriptions of setting or conflict that Martin writes. These are the common sentences, the blending brushstrokes, the sort of necessary descriptions that flesh out a story but don't stand out on their own. Let me take you through each example, and I'll emphasize and highlight every adjective, as well as shed some light on Martin's use of the rule of three technique. Be sure to let me know in the comments if I missed any adjectives. I'm worried it's inevitable. Page 4. The fool turned his patched and piebald head to watch Pylos climb the steep iron steps to the rookery. If you're wondering why I've called this the rule of three when the adjectives are in pairs, it's because the rule of three is a rhythmic rule, which broadly states that people best enjoy everything from words to characters to conflicts when they come in bundles of 3. Why does it work? Well, I'm not entirely sure. If I started down that rabbit hole, I'd likely begin with Nikola Tesla and end up with the Hindu Holy Trinity. Whatever the reason, the brain really likes these patterns of threes. In this example, and many others, the Trinity includes the noun, because the rule of three relates to the description of the entire object, a group of words that are one entity within the sentence, in this case, 2 adjectives and a noun. Imagine if Martin had written a third adjective for each description, and the sentence went something like, "The fool turned his smooth and patched and piebald head to watch Pylos climb the steep, scary iron steps to the rookery." It sounds off, right? Like there are too many words being crammed in. This is because 3 beats, whether they are successive words or, as we'll later see, successive clauses within a sentence, is the maximum number of beats you can write in succession before the rhythm feels disrupted in the reader's mind. And when it comes to adjectives, their purpose being to add specificity to descriptions, the more you include, the more clear your description becomes, so you might as well take advantage of the rule of 3 and use the maximum number of them. Now, there are exceptions to the rule of 3, as there are exceptions to all rules of writing. Just read Hemingway. But if you're looking for reliable rhythm in your prose, it's hard to go wrong with words or clauses or sentences packaged in threes. Let's read the next example. Page 4 and 5. He took her small pink hand in his own frail spotted one and gave it a gentle squeeze. Notice again the packaged trinities, small pink hand and frail spotted one, both consisting of 2 adjectives and a noun. Martin includes just 1 adjective before his next noun, which is completely fine and in many cases preferred, by the way. But by adding a third clause, he once again abides by the rule of 3, only this time on a larger scale. Let's move on to the next example. Page 10. Davos was a slight man, his low birth written plain upon a common face. A well-worn green cloak, stained by salt and spray and faded from the sun, draped his thin shoulders, over brown doublet and breeches that matched brown eyes and hair. About his neck a pouch of worn leather hung from a thong. His small beard was well peppered with grey, and he wore a leather glove on his maimed left hand. Again, here we see many instances of the rule of 3, like the triple repetition of adjectives, each with their own noun, used to describe the character in broad strokes. Or this trinity, made up of 2 adjectives and a noun. There's even a trinity of nouns here, preceded by descriptive verbs, with salt, spray, and sun, all of which also start with the letter S. Here's 2 trinities with 1 adjective and 2 nouns, brown doublet and breeches, and brown eyes and hair. And at the end, we've got another sentence with 3 nouns of description, one of which Martin chose to make a 2 adjective trinity. When it comes to having multiple clauses in a sentence, each with their own adjectives and nouns, you basically have to go by ear, listening to the rhythm of the words to see if you want to describe the noun with 1, 2, or 0 adjectives. You don't want your sentence, or even paragraph, to sound crammed with too many words, but neither do you want it to sound sparse and lacking specificity. I find Martin walks this line very well, adding plentiful detail without overwhelming the reader. One other small technique of note is Martin's use of the word of to tack on an adjective and noun, in this case worn leather, to describe the composition of another noun, in this case the pouch. Once again, this forms a trinity. Let's quickly go through these next 3 examples. Page 181. He chose boots of supple black leather, soft lambswool breeches of silver grey, a black velvet doublet with the golden kraken of the Greyjoys embroidered on the breast. Around his throat he fastened a slender gold chain, around his waist a belt of bleached white leather. Once again, you've got these triplet trinities, as well as the use of the word of to tack on an adjective, and 2 more trinities consisting of 2 adjectives and a noun. Page 43. Sir Meren entered from the west side of the yard, clad in gleaming white plate chased with gold, and mounted on a milk-white charger with a flowing grey mane. Here we have another triple clause, triple trinity scenario. Note that while milk-white is a single adjective, it has the syllable count of 2. Remember, the rule of 3 is rhythmic, often dependent on syllable beats rather than independent words. Martin also uses a verb here to tack on an extra adjective, which is a technique with great potential. Page 79. In this next example, he's dreaming of being a wolf, by the way. He was moving on 4 good legs, strong and swift, and he could feel the ground underfoot, the soft crackling of fallen leaves, thick roots and hard stones, the deep layers of humus. I wanted to include this example to show you a structure that does not abide by the rule of 3, where nouns are paired with adjectives. Good legs, soft crackling, fallen leaves, thick roots, hard stones, deep layers. There is even a pairing of the adjectives strong and swift in adherence with this sentence's 2-beat rhythm. This last example is from A Game of Thrones, the first book in Martin's series, A Song of Ice and Fire, one you might recall from my video on how Martin contrasts his descriptions, linked below. I wanted to include it here because it's a great example of Martin's adjective use when describing settings, as opposed to all these previous examples which were describing characters. Page 22. Catelyn had never liked this godswood. She had been born a Tully at Riverrun far to the south, on the red fork of the Trident. The godswood there was a garden, bright and airy, where tall redwoods spread dappled shadows across tinkling streams, birds sang from hidden nests, and the air was spicy with the scent of flowers. The gods of Winterfell kept a different sort of wood. It was a dark, primal place, 3 acres of old forest untouched for 10,000 years as the gloomy castle rose around it. It smelled of moist earth and decay. No redwoods grew here. This was a wood of stubborn sentinel trees, armored in grey-green needles, of mighty oaks, of ironwoods as old as the realm itself. Here thick black trunks crowded close together, while twisted branches wove dense canopy overhead, and misshapen roots wrestled beneath the soil. This was a place of deep silence and brooding shadows, and the gods who lived here had no names. The rule of 3 is sprinkled all throughout this excerpt with regards to adjective use, and if you want to pause the video to identify all the techniques we've previously discussed, feel free to. But instead of examining Martin's patterns of adjectives, I thought I'd draw your attention instead to Martin's choice of adjectives. Note the difference in tone between the adjectives of the first setting, namely bright, airy, tall, dappled, tinkling, hidden, and spicy, with those of the second setting, dark, primal, old, gloomy, moist, stubborn, sentinel, grey-green, mighty, old, thick, black, twisted, dense, misshapen, deep, brooding. In my video on how Martin contrasts his descriptions, I highlighted his word choice more broadly and discussed the role these words play in evoking imagery in the reader's mind. And you can see here how many of these words are adjectives, those little words that add so much yet often go by unnoticed. Anyway, I hope you found these techniques useful. Give them a try next time you sit down to write, and be sure to like and subscribe for more technical writing videos.